mentioned earlier that we're gonna bring a lot of notable faces from tour and travel industry to learn from them and about COVID-19 and any other things. So here we are with Philippa from Indian Experiences. Welcome to our show, Philippa.
Thank you very much.
And I'm here with Rohit as well, who is a very active travel agent. Hi, Rohit.
Hello. Hello.
All right. So it's great to have you here. Let me ask some of the interesting question. When I saw your blog, you mentioned about you are showcasing a different India, right? And that shows the passion. And we just talked about your story there. Tell us, what is the inspiration behind choosing India? Why India?
Why India? I didn't necessarily choose India, I don't think. I'm not sure, India necessarily is some way, and it is some way that you choose, but I think India chooses you to a degree.
Wow.
And I have to say, I came to India back in 1998, and it was almost accidental. So I'd been working out in the mountains in Europe. I'd been a ski guide and for several years, and I decided that I needed to come back to London and think about my career. And I actually thought I wanted to go into event management. So I'd been for a second interview for an event within an event management company, and I had a few hours to kill. And I bought a magazine, and I saw an advert in the back of the magazine that said, travel expert required. And I thought, well, I'm a ski guide for 6 years, and in the summers I'd gone off to Greece or to Austria or whatever. So I applied, and I went and met these people for lunch. They just said, come down and meet us today. And I went and had lunch with them. And they had a travel company specializing in Africa, and they wanted to set up another travel company. And even they didn't know which destination. So then they just said, well, look, great, we like you. We'd like you to do this for us. But we don't know where we're going to sell yet. So I said, well, okay, we'll get back to you when we've decided. And in the meantime, they were approached by some people who were selling their travel business on Kerala. So they flew out to Kerala, they had a look at it, they came back, they phoned me, and they said, we've decided on South India. And what was fantastic for me was that, it was a case of, they had this policy that if you hadn't seen it, you couldn't sell it. Because they wanted you to really know the product and to really be able to connect with the clients on that level. So then they shipped me out to South India. It was meant to be 3 weeks, and I ended up staying there for 6 weeks. And then I went around, exploring all the different regions and destinations, and and that was how it happened. And it was a case of, I think up until that point, I couldn't even have pointed to India on a map. And I did everything in reverse. I started with South India, and I only came to the North India and the Taj Mahal and all that stuff later. So that's how India and I found each other, should we say. But I was talking about this with somebody a couple of days ago, and saying as well that even then, and I've always been, people have said to me right from the start, whether it's George Dominic from CGH Hotels or, Sunil Varghese from June or whatever, these are people I've known right from the start. And they said to me right at the beginning that I was never happy with what I was being shown. Not that I wasn't happy with what I was being shown per se, but I always felt there could be more. There was something missing. And I went around South India, and I saw the extraordinary temples in Tamil Nadu, and I went to Munnar and did the backwaters, and 22 years ago there were hardly any houseboats, and I did this and I saw these things, but for me there was just something that wasn't quite connecting. And I think on one particular day I was in Tamil Nadu, couldn't tell you where, possibly somewhere around Trichy, Tanjore, and I got talking to the guy behind the hotel reception. And I was just like, I'm seeing sights and I'm getting facts quoted at me, but I don't know, I just feel there's something more. And he just said, come to my village. And so the next day we went off to his village. Now I couldn't tell you where this village was, I couldn't tell you the name of the village, I couldn't tell you anything about it. What I can tell you is I was probably the first white person who'd ever been into that village.
Wow.
And there were these three ladies sitting on the doorstep outside their house, and they had their faces covered in sandalwood paste. you know.
Mm-hmm.
And they were chatting, and a few doors down there was an old lady who had palm leaves and tiny little conch shells, and she was doing somebody's reading,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Somebody from the local chai stall came running over with some chai for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a family invited me into their home to show me around their home, and we had this conversation, you know, in sign language. It was, you know, do you have children, and 3 boys, and all this kind of thing. And I just spent about 3 hours in that village. And you know, the guy from the local snack stand came over and gave me some snacks, and I was invited into another home and given buttermilk, and that's my defining memory of my first trip to India, you know. And it was meeting the people and seeing how they lived and being welcomed and invited and being shown that true Indian hospitality. Yeah.
Wow.
And I think that was, you know, because people have often said to me, what, you know, why India, and when did you fall in love with it, and was it love at first sight, and you've seen so much, and that for me is the defining moment of what captured my imagination with India. And retrospectively, I think that has also defined how I've then seen India and put India ever since then.
Wow. So like you said, India chooses you, right? I mean, and the whole thing happened. Destiny has a big part, and the whole sequence of the story kind of inspired on that direction. And thank God that now we have a different India experience through you. And and so the next question is, great. You know, after you chose India, how's your journey so far? It should not be very simple. I mean, it's interesting, but every journey has its own ups and downs, inspiration. You get to hard time, and they say, no, I'm going to continue. What are those inspirations which keeps on coming back, you know, for the India as such to get to your mission specifically?
Yeah, India is not easy.
Yeah.
You know, I think traveling to India on holiday, you have the most extraordinary experiences, and this whole concept of guest is God and whatever. And I think that kind of experience is very different from a living in India experience, where you know, she's in your face day in, day out. You know, I'm not the only person who says this. Many other people have said it, and I think for everything you can say about India, the exact opposite is also true.
Absolutely.
You know, you know, and people will ask you questions, and you'll answer the question. It's like, well, so and so told me this, and I will say, well, yes, that is also true. You know, but for me, and I've written about this, and I describe India as a cruel mistress. You know, and I think of India as a living entity. It's not a country that's overseas. You know, she's a living entity, and she's a cruel mistress. And I think when she engages you, and she teases you, and she fascinates you, and she beguiles you, and she is all those extraordinary things. And when she's working with you, it's an unstoppable force, and your life gets propelled forward in ways that you could never have imagined.
Right.
But when she's not working with you, when she's against you, bam, she lets you know it, you know, and she slaps you down. And I've been through that twice. You know, I've been through India saying no to me very, very clearly on 2 occasions. And it's as again, looking reflectively, I can see that in both instances I was going down the wrong path, you know, and going down possibly the wrong path for me. But it's, you know, I started with India, so I set up this company for these investors that we've talked about back in 1998. You know, we managed to get featured on the BBC holiday programme. We went from here to here virtually overnight. And then I went and consulted for another travel company who wanted to set up an India division, and then I was asked to go and set up another travel company for some more investors who wanted to be the Rolls-Royce of travel to India. And so I'd very much been, you know, from a UK perspective, you know, selling India, doing inbound into India. And then I had the opportunity to take a 6-month sabbatical and go and run a lodge in Karnal National Park in Madras. And, that coincided superbly with me finding out that the guy I'd been dating for a couple of years was married. So I was very happy to leave him behind. But I literally left London with everything that it has.
Mm-hmm.
And 3 days later, I was in Kanha National Park, and this was 2005-06. And, there's no electricity and no running water, and a team of 14 tribal staff who were great but didn't speak any English. And the nearest shops were 10-hour round trip away, and you're thrown into that situation.
Right.
Okay, let's deal with it. But it was amazing. It was extraordinary. It showcased to me, real offbeat India and getting to know the people and living with the people. And then I decided after that 6 months that I didn't really want to go back to London. I mean, how can you go back to London having had an experience like that and go back to a mundane 9-to-5 job? And this is where I say where India works with you. I was just thinking, I don't really want to go back. When somebody came to the lodge, and he was working at one of the biggest travel companies in Delhi, and they'd been specialists in mass market tourism up until that point, but they wanted to set up a luxury division, and they were looking for somebody to lead that for them. So I just got chatting to him, and he was like, well, if you don't want to go back and we're looking for somebody, and you're a luxury travel specialist, and so why don't you come and meet the owner of the company? So I did that, and then I ended up, sort of staying in India for the next 13 years.
Wow. Oh, long time.
So, I worked for them, and then I went to work for another travel company, and then I set up my own business. So when India deems that everything falls into place, everything does. But then, I got, and as I say, retrospectively, I think I was going down the path. And I got ill. I got typhoid, dengue fever, and hepatitis in the space of 1 year. And then as a result of that, my recovery was about a three-year period when I came back to the UK. So that's when I said, India decided, no, things aren't working, you're going down the wrong path, you need some time out. But then when I'd recovered from that, again, it was like, okay, you're ready again now. And I went down to London to World Travel Market, and I happened to get chatting to this guy who wanted someone to go in and curate all new experiences for them within their travel company, and would I be interested in moving back to India, and everything just then falls into place again. So, I think you need to listen to the messages that are being given to you. But there's something in me that will always want to, is always going to have India at the heart of whatever I do.
Wow, I mean, you explained in the most beautiful way. I totally agree with you. If you want to get love and affection from India, of course, you have to follow certain norms and way, right? And you described it beautifully there. And I believe that's the base for your journey for IndianExperience.com, right? That's your inspiration behind your IndianExperience.com. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so Indian Experiences, so basically, basically Indian Experiences came about because, I have been really, really privileged in that, yes, I've lived in, the jungles in central India, and I spent a couple of years living in Jaipur, and I get invited to go to all these incredible places. And so I see what India has to offer and the potential that it has for people. And I think the vast majority, I think the UK market is slightly different because agents from the UK market will visit India. They want to know the product firsthand. Okay, so they'll send their agents out for sort of a couple of times a year for 2 or 3 weeks for them to explore a region. But I think a lot of people overseas don't do that. A lot of other agents from different countries don't do that. And I think a lot of what is sold is just a very, very standard package. Everyone's heard of the Golden Triangle. And again, this is in twofold. It's the message that's got out by press and PR and media to outside of India. But it's also what people sell. It's very easy to sell the Golden Triangle. It's very easy to sell, Taj and Tigers. It's very easy to sell Roger's Stone, the Golden Triangle and Delhi, Agra, Jaipur. It's very easy to sell a standard trip to Kerala, But you do that and you've done 0.001% of what India has to offer, okay? And you're doing what you've heard of. You're not doing what you would choose to do on a holiday. Okay.
Wow.
So I've seen all these extraordinary places, whether it's in Uttarakhand or Himachal or in the northeast or in central India or in Tamil Nadu or Karnataka, and you go off and you see what India has to offer, and these messages aren't got out to the travel companies, and then all travel companies end up selling the same old, you know? And then they're just competing on the same level, and all they compete on really is price.
Yes.
So I decided that, you know, Indian experiences could really help bridge the gap between the tour companies and the DMCs, you know. And I also believe that India is sold incorrectly. And I get into a lot of trouble for this, but you know, people will call and say, I want to go to India. I've been on the receiving end of those phone calls, countless phone calls. People say, I want to go to India, I want to do India, I want to do the Golden Triangle, you know, I want to do Rajasthan. And then if you say to them, okay, I understand that you want to see the Taj Mahal, you've heard of the Taj Mahal, you've not been to India before, but why India? Why do you want to go to India? What is it about India that appeals to you? What is it about India that inspires you? And people go, the food, or, okay, let's take it back another stage. What are your interests? What are your hobbies? You know, what did you do last weekend? Okay, obviously not in a COVID world, but what did you do last weekend? What would you choose to do if you went away next weekend? Where did you go on holiday last year, and what did you enjoy about that? And then once you know much more about the person, and if you know the product of India well enough, you can then curate a journey for them that's going to be like something they've never even imagined.
Wow.
You know? So if you say to people, okay, take the Taj Mahal out of the equation. We'll send you to the Taj Mahal. That's not a problem. Okay. But what are your interests? What are your hobbies? You know, if people say, well, I'm into trekking, or well, we're into horse racing, or well, we're really into food, or well, my son's an architect, but my daughter's a yoga instructor, you can tailor India around that. So Indian Experiences was set up to showcase that India to the tour operators and the travel agents, you know, to help them sell a very different India, to help them learn so much more about the country. You know, and we go into travel companies and we say to people, okay, it's not a case of, right, you want to sell India, sell these packages. You know, from a tour operator's perspective, we'll say to them, well, what's your client demographic? And what's your company brand? And what do you sell in other countries? And what gives you your USPs in those countries? Okay, and once you've got an overview of their company, you can say, well, do you know what? These products will suit you, these itineraries, these kind of accommodations, these kind of experiences.
Right.
You know, and then you're giving them a sort of a niche and a USP in the market as well, and they can take a different India out there. So, you know, I could be one person trying to promote this extraordinary country that I know exists. But if I could reach out to a lot of different agents and tour operators and travel agents and get them selling that India, you know. So, you know, during lockdown, I've been doing a series of webinars, and it's, you know, to encourage people who don't sell India to start selling India. So, you know, we've been doing the webinars on getting the basics right. So, you know, the Golden Triangle, the Rajasthan, or your Kerala or your Goa, but how you can sell that, but also make it bespoke, make the mainstream tailor-made. Okay. Then we've been doing spotlight destinations, because agents who promote India, again, promote the most popular regions and the regions they get asked about the most.
Right.
So we've been doing training on other regions, you know, whether it's the Northeast or whether it's Gujarat or Madhya Pradesh or wherever, so that they get an insight into other destinations that they can be persuaded to promote. But then, and this is this whole, you know, rebranding India that I would love to do, because people think of India as, you know, a series of monuments. And they go and they see monuments and they get a history lesson quoted at them and they get dragged into a shop and then off they go. But actually India doesn't have to just be that, you know, and it appeals to the 60 plus age group and what have you, all backpackers. But India doesn't have to be that. India is a fantastic adventure destination. You know, this is what I speak to Vaibhav about. It's a fantastic family destination. It's an amazing colour destination. It's an amazing textile destination. Yeah? And people don't think of India in those ways. You know, they think of it as the Golden Triangle. So that was a very long-winded way of saying what I try and do with Indian experiences. You know, it's getting a
Wow.
different India out to market, but the India that I know people would appreciate far more, or I
Wow.
would hope they would appreciate far more. I shouldn't
Wow.
say I know.
The approach is, let me tell you, the approach is so humanistic. And while selling the product, sometimes they miss this humanistic aspect of it. And it's like, okay, I got a product and you're the buyer. Let me sell you the best golden triangle. But and there in between there's a humanistic approach, like you said, you know, understand them, what they want to do, and then, you know, try to get them the best feel based on the knowledge and not just the predefined products, right? And great, that's definitely a totally new insight and totally new way of, I think a lot of people will learn from this experience. Now, first of all, congratulations for your book, Escape to India.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you.
And tell us how's that book going on? I'm sure the whole experience is behind that book, right? How's everything going on with the Escape to India book?
And how did you get the name Escape to India?
Yeah.
Because when you took the name, in fact, like I suppose the front page of the book when you were going up, and you were really concerned which page I should select it. So it was a whole lot of journey. If I saw that.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a fun process.
Yeah.
Do you know what? For years, because I actually wrote the book 5 years ago, and excuse me, I wrote it at a time when I was recovering from my illness. So I said I had that 3-year illness, and so when I was recovering and I couldn't work and I had time on my hands, and a friend of mine just said, "Philippa, write." I said, "Yeah, that's where your forte lies. That's where your skill lies. Why don't you write?" And all I'd written up until that point was emails, you know. So I was like, okay, but I had time on my hands, so I started writing. So it was written about 5 years ago, and I could never ever decide on a name. And somebody said, "Oh, but I just think Girl India." And this was 5 years ago, and Girl India kind of stuck for up until very recently. But I was never really happy with it. And then a couple of people said, "Well, it has some negative connotations, and really, and the kind of people that the Facebook page was attracting wasn't really appropriate, shall we say?" And it just never really worked well. And then I sort of put it out to Facebook and saying, "What do you think?" And ideas then started coming in, and I thought about, because the book can become a trilogy. So it started out in the jungle when I first moved to India. But then, I moved to Delhi, and then after living in Delhi, I moved to Jaipur. So I have stories from all these different places. So the idea was that the book would become a trilogy. So then I was thinking about, well, A Year in the Jungle, or the Jaipur years, or the Delhi years, or something. And then, one of my friends just said, "Well, you escaped. You escaped to India."
Here you go. You got a title. You got a title.
Yeah, so there we go. So that's just how it came about, and it is based on my time in Kanha. And it's, while it is a fictional novel, and I'm not entirely sure anyone's written any fiction about Madhya Pradesh before. So it is a fictional novel, but actually the setting is 100%. It's correct. The experiences of running the lodge and the events that happen. I mean, there's a firing camp, and then there's and there's orphaned tiger cubs, and there's all different things that happen. And as the seasons change, different things happen. And then the staff have a tribal wedding that the protagonist gets invited to. And so the novel was just, it's based about, the setting is real, the story is fictional. So I released it 4 weeks ago. And it's been a really fun journey, actually. It's very, I think, because, although it's fictional and most of the characters are fictional and an amalgamation of different people that I've met, the main character is very much me. And I think when you've written something that's so personal, it's quite nerve-wracking when you put it out there. So, I put it out there. And plus I'm writing about India. And yes, India's been my soul and my career and my passion for 20 plus years, but I'm not Indian at the end of the day, So I put it out there. And then the feedback it's been getting has been amazing. And it's not a small book, it's 370 odd pages.
Oh, wow.
But people have literally read it in 3 days or 4 days. You know, people have been saying, we couldn't put it down, it's a page turner, you have to read the next chapter. But I started feeling much more relieved and much easier about it when some of my Indian friends who are also from the wildlife sector read it. And, you know, they came back and said, you captured it brilliantly. You know, you captured the jungles, you know, so they didn't spot any mistakes in my Hindi or you know, any mistakes with my descriptions of the jungle or the animals or anything. So then I felt like, okay, I can breathe a bit now. But then people who live in my hometown who've never been to India, you know, sort of read it and came back to me and said, we could picture it, we could imagine it, we were there in the book with you. So once I knew that it crossed the divide for both an Indian audience and a sort of foreign audience, then I started really enjoying the process. Yeah, and the feedback it's getting, it's great, and people are reading it really quickly, and everyone's asking me where book 2 is, and yeah, so it's a really fun journey, and it's encouraging people. People are now telling me they want to travel to Madhya Pradesh. So
I'm from Madhya Pradesh, by the way. I'm from.
Oh, are you? Whereabouts?
I'm from Riva, CD. There's a small town. I'm from there.
I know Riva. It featured on my
White Tiger.
White Tiger.
Yeah,
White Tiger.
Yeah. So there's small town CD, and that's where I'm from. But CD River pretty close. And Madhya Pradesh has a lot to offer. Esther, Khajuraho is there, and so many things are there. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. My favorite state, I have to say.
And this is amazing to hear about it, that you wrote a story, entire book on Madhya Pradesh. Is it available on Kindle or Amazon?
Yeah, it's available. So I've had difficulty getting out into India, so it only became available in India 2 days ago. It's on Kindle, so it's on Amazon. It's on amazon.com.co.uk, .in, all those, as an ebook version. And it's also available now as a paperback on amazon.in, but also on Notion Press. So Notion Press facilitated the fact that I could get the paperback out in India. And what I want to do,
go ahead.
Sorry?
And I was saying that you should definitely take that in Audible as well. I'm a very Audible guy. Audible.
Yeah, well, do you know, you're about the second or third person who said that to me this week, so I need to look at the Audible version. But I've published it through Notion Press 2 days ago. And then just because of the plight and everything that's happening in India right now, I wanted to help as much as I could from here. So for every book that's sold through Notion Press, I'm donating 75 rupees into the NGOs that we support through Indian Experiences. So Rasoy on Wheels, who are feeding all the migrants in Delhi at the moment, and Wildlife SOS, who have rescued all the dancing bears and the elephants. So for every book that's sold through Notion Press, I'm donating 75 rupees into a fund for the NGOs that we support with Indian Experiences.
Wow. Yeah. Now, and this is something great, and I'm learning. I'm from Madhya Pradesh, and I'm Indian. I'm from India. I'm learning India through your experiences now, and so now coming back to one of the most important things, COVID-19 is kind of touching everybody, and we know that COVID-19 will be ending sometime. How do you see the changing tourists after COVID-19? What will they be looking for? What will overall the industry will be changing from tourist perspective?
If I'm being 100% honest with you, this is a topic that, to a degree, I've tried to avoid, which may seem sort of callous or naive or whatever, but I don't think so, because I don't think we know how the industry is going to react. I don't think we know what the recovery steps are going to be.
Right.
And I think there's an awful lot of speculation out there. And there's been webinar after webinar after webinar after webinar on speculation about how this is going to affect the industry. Okay. But at the end of the day, we don't know how it's going to affect the industry. And I think a lot of people are sitting there going, oh, well, people just aren't going to want to travel. Well, I'm part of a business group here in Yorkshire, and we had our kind of big Zoom catch-up meeting with about 60 people on Friday morning. And all of those people are saying, we still want to travel. As soon as this is over, we want to travel. So Are people going to travel differently? Yes, most probably. And there are going to have to be different procedures and things in place, and I understand that. But we don't know exactly how that's going to happen at this stage. I think related to India, the narrative of India hasn't changed in 23 years, despite my and a lot of other people's best efforts. It's Delhi belly and poverty. Those are the first two things that people throw at you. So I think there are people who, the people who would never have travelled to India are definitely never going to come now. Anybody who was like, no, not going to India, they're not going to come, right? The people who've been to India, I think, will come again, because India does that to you. But a lot of the people who've travelled to India previously have always carried a mask and carried hand sanitizer and been quite careful, just because of the very nature of the fact that it's India and they're convinced they're going to get ill. A lot of people travel to India like that anyway. So in terms of attracting people to India post-COVID, it's going to be the middle ground people that need working on. The people who are going to come aren't going to come. The people who love it can't wait to get back there. It's those middle ground people, and they're the ones that are going to be, a lot harder to attract, I think. But I think it's the reassurance. I mean, most travel on a luxury level is in a private car with a driver, and you do tend to get people to slightly more remote and offbeat places, and that. But again, that's the narrative that doesn't get out there. So it's making sure that narrative gets out to people.
Right.
And that hotels are taking precautions, and that the cleanliness and the hygiene is there. I mean, it is there, but just re-enhancing that narrative to people. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting time, but I don't think people are going to stop traveling
for some time. I
think people still want to go.
And we are certainly doing trying to get the knowledge base from hotel and other industry, what they are trying to do, so that people come and learn, get a little more confident about new protocol and SOPs. Now, Rohit, that's pretty interesting, right?
In fact, I represent I'm a travel agent, so of course I represent how the travel agent function here. And as the people, they know the Philippa is very well connected with the people of India, the service provider in India, and as well as the tourist who comes to India. And people consider you as a bridge in between. You understand the mentality of both the prospect. So, of course, knowing that since you represent them, so what is your suggestion to the service provider, since you know them very well? So what would be your suggestion to them? They should take a precaution so that they can ensure the complete hygiene.
I think in terms of looking at the hygiene aspect for people to travel post-COVID, I would leave that to the hoteliers and for people to decide. I think this is a brilliant opportunity for India to change the way that it works overall. And I think it's going to be a crucial time once COVID is over or is on the way out and people start traveling again. It's going to be a crucial time, and it's a time where India really needs to come together and work as a team. The one thing I discovered, and I know everything I'm about to say is probably going to make me very unpopular, but it's my narrative, and it hasn't necessarily changed, but it's one that I wholeheartedly believe in. And I think, and I'm not, there are niche specialist operators out there. And that's one thing that I meant to say, sorry, when we were talking about, what will encourage people to travel back to India, is it's finding those people who know and understand India and booking it with them. Don't try and wing it and do it on your own. Don't necessarily go to the biggest company who just churn people through. It's find those niche specialist operators who really understand the country to book through, because they will be able to understand your concerns and your questions, and they will know where the safest places to go. But for me, I've worked in the Indian travel industry now, and I've seen it from the inbound perspective. And then I've also been within India and seen it, the way that it works there, since 2006. And to a large degree, it's very dog eat dog. To a large degree, it's me, myself, and I. I think just the Indian travel industry just finds it really hard to consolidate and come together and work together.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And a lot of it is about undercutting each other. Everyone wants the business, so I'll undercut you, I'll offer you a cheaper price, and they browbeat hotels on price, and they browbeat transport providers on price. And when all that is happening, the result is the quality diminishes. The quality of the hotels and the services that hotels can provide. Because if a hotel charges this much, and the industry is only prepared to pay the hotels that much, what suffers? There has to be a compromise, and whether it's a compromise in the quality of the food, or the amount of staff, or the amount of cleaners, or that these hotels can employ. The quality of the vehicles diminishes. You're not going to have a perfectly immaculately clean car in fantastic condition. And this constant dog eat dog and undercutting and selling cheaper, I think, is one thing that really has been detrimental to the travel industry. And I think if we don't learn from that moving forward post-COVID, we're going to be back in a worse position than we were in already. The number of travellers to India is pathetically low when you look at other countries. Okay. And I think because you have this dog eat dog attitude, there's this undercutting and selling cheap. And it's also not focusing on the client experience, and it's not focusing on the destination as a whole. People sell the golden triangle because you can get shopping commissions, and it's easy to make money on shopping commissions, and you don't have to make money on the holiday, and you can get cheap hotels. Where's the experience for the client in that? But not only where is the experience in that for the client, the client is taken around mediocre hotels, given a mediocre service, they're dragged into shops they don't want to be dragged into, and they go away not wanting to come back to India. Now, the India that I believe in showcasing to people gets people away from those mainstream destinations. It gets them into slightly more rural destinations. It gets them into the heart of the country. It gets them into meeting people. It gives them an experience that's going to make them want to come back to India. And that's what India needs. It's not making a quick buck from this person from a shop. It's creating those stories. It's creating that narrative. It's people leaving India and talking to other people and saying, I know you said you'd never go, but honestly, we've just had the most extraordinary trip, and this is where we went, and this is what we did. And by doing that, you're also engaging local communities more. And local communities are really the communities that need our help right now. And street vendors, and taking people for a chai on the street as long as it's safe, and taking people to buy vegetables from the local vendors, and getting people out into more rural communities, so that these communities can benefit from tourism, and not just the big hotels and not just the transport providers. It has to filter down so that the whole narrative changes. I think. And that's what I would like to see, is for India to come together as a team, to work together, to change the narrative, to explore much more of India, to get into slightly more offbeat India, to be much more experiential about the products that are being offered, and getting a whole lot more people in local communities to benefit from tourism as well. And I think, by that, and by, the services are going to be maintained, standards are going to be maintained, the standard of transport and drivers is going to be better, the standard of hygiene and cleanliness is going to be better, the client experience isn't going to be compromised, you're going to get repeat business. And I think that's the opportunity that India now has moving forward, and I really truly hope that happens.
That's a great message for the Indian service provider. In fact, if I look into the people have to re-look for the India as a destination before they sell to going cheap, and they have to really change their narrative about his own country. That's a great message for the Indian service provider from Philippa. And now this adding to the another question, of course, there's one place called Kerala, and the Kerala has been a really highlight destination under the COVID-19, when the Kerala was the first state which was recovered from the COVID-19. It has somehow been said since in Kerala is following the Ayurveda norms and things, and because of that, it's helped a lot to enhance the immunity. So what do you have to say about the Ayurveda of India?
I really do I'm not going to say enjoy Ayurveda, because I'm not entirely sure anybody actually enjoys Ayurveda, but I really truly appreciate Ayurveda. I've done a full course now 3 or 4 times. Kerala is where I started, and the very first article that I managed to get published on India was actually about Ayurveda. Condé Nast had contacted me back in 1999, and they'd heard about Ayurveda, and they wanted some stories and results on it. And then over the years, I've become a guinea pig to CGH Group. Whenever they opened a new spa, it was, let's get Philippa along, and she'll, because I have a reputation for being honest. I think I'm fair, but I'm honest. And if I think something is wrong, then I'll let you know that this could perhaps be done differently. So I've done Ayurveda 3 or 4 different times myself. I've done it. I've done it to be a guinea pig to, people have opened a spa and said, please go and do Ayurveda and let us know what you think. But then also when I recovered from my 3-year illness and before I started my job, I took myself off to do Ayurveda on a 2-week program, because I wanted to make sure that I was as healthy as I could be before I started. And I think I'm a great advocate in philosophies and medical philosophies from India, because I think it's all about prevention rather than cure. If you have a headache in the UK, you get given a painkiller. Okay. If you get a headache in Kerala, it's like, well, why are you getting the headache? And I think that's the difference in both philosophies. And Ayurveda is something that never ever really took off in the UK. The British market hasn't picked up on it. The European market love it. So the last time I did Ayurveda was in 2015, and I was the only Brit in the whole hotel. Everybody else was from France and Denmark and Russia and Belgium and whatever. And I just said to these people, why? The Brits won't come and do this, but why do you come and do it? What do you see the benefit to be? And somebody likened it to me as having your car serviced. Okay. So you don't run a car for 2 years without having it serviced. You tinker with it and you look after it a little bit and you make sure it's got the right petrol and the right oil, but every few months you take it for a service. And they said that's what you do with your body. That's what you do with Ayurveda. It goes and so the whole Panchakarma thing is people go in and they do a 2-week process, and it's rejuvenating and it restarts you. But then it's also fabulous. It's also fabulous for treating the cause of. I know so many people. I know one guy who'd never been able to eat wheat in his life, and he went and did 3 weeks of Ayurveda, and now he's delighted that he can eat pizzas and burgers. It's a great philosophy, system, way of life. And it's one that I think a lot more people should do and should take time to do. I'm toying with the idea after this of once we can travel again, I'd love to go back and do another 2 or 3 week program.
That's great.
Wow. Wow. And so while we are about to wrap up the call, Philippa, this is a so nice discussion with you. Inspirational, motivational, and I'm seeing a different India through your experience. And your humanistic approach. I mean, I really call this humanistic approach, right? It's not selling a product. It's about humanistic approach, understanding people and setting up the right thing to them so that they benefit. It's not like a shortcutting anything. It's doing the right thing for the people, and certainly that's such a great message in our show. So
add to the Sanjay word, there are many people, they may not be able to come to India, and probably they'll get the opportunity to read your book Escape to India, and probably they will learn more about the India, will inspire to them to come to India, and I have many people will learn.
Let's hope so. I've already had some people write to me and say that now they want to visit Madhya Pradesh. So let's hope it inspires a lot more people.
I'm gonna get it from Kindle for sure, and I want to see Madhya Pradesh. I mean, especially CD Riva, where I live. Did you capture Riva as well there in the book or CD?
Not in the book, no. I did mention Riva a couple of days ago. I've been doing a fun kind of A to Z of India on Facebook to keep everybody engaged about India and promoting. So I talked about Riva because a very good friend of mine, Mariam Reshi, who's the food critic for the Times of India, she recently met Maharaja from there and was really interested in
Martin
the food.
yeah.
Yeah, so she was really interested in the food and things of the region. So her and I have been discussing doing a trip out there pre-COVID. But so hopefully that will still happen. So it's an area that I haven't been to, but it was. I'm also planning a drive across India from Kutch to Kohima, and sort of using it as an excuse to nip into Riva. So.
Wow.
So basically, from west to east, you will be traveling.
Yeah, we just thought this whole it's a 28-day drive that we've planned. So starting at the Great Run of Kutch on a full moon night and ending up in Kohima at the Hornbill Festival. We think it'd be really good fun.
Wow.
In ambassadors.
What? You're getting the ambassador?
I have an ambassador.
Very nice, great.
Yeah, I have an ambassador. I bought her in 2006. I bought her in 2007.
Oh, ambassador. Oh, okay. That's
ambassador, the car, like.
Oh,
the
yeah.
Car, like the. That's an Indian pride.
Indian pride.
Absolutely.
There you
Absolutely.
go.
I love my ambassador.
With that thought, Philippa, again, we want to continue this discussion and definitely. So thank you very much for joining the show. We are definitely looking forward for once again, maybe with your second book, more experiences in our show and next time. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Philippa. Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you.